One more data type in Matlab, which is much more rarely used, but still it's good to know it, is called structures. So if you have any programming experience, it may remind you of databases, for instance, and the idea here is similar. It's just so that you have one data form which can then have different attributes, and those attributes can store information, different type of information about a specific item which is in that structure. So how does it work? Well, you can recognize structures by the fact that you would be accessing its attributes with the dot after the name of the structure. So in here, for instance, if I want to create a structure, its name is just S, but then the attributes I have within the structure is name, score, and grade. So I'm trying to create a list of students who are listed with their name, the score they got from the exam, and then the grade, which is respective to the score. So if I type those in the way they are into Matlab, I will get the output as we could see. So let's see. First one was name, and I expect it to be text, so we put it in quotes. Add plum. Then we have score, and he had 83 points. It's numeric, so we keep it that way. And then grade is again character, since we want to express it in the A to E range. So I have my first item in the structure ready, and it has 3 attributes. When I run this and I ask Matlab for what S is, then it tells us its structure with fields name, score, and grade. And now to that structure, I can add next items. So for instance, I would like to add another student who has different name, different score, and grade. So there are 2 ways. We can either do it one by one, like in the first case. So I will first copy the base, but now I'm pointing that it's the second guy. So I'm giving the index here, and notice that this index is placed next to the structure name and not the attribute, because we want to say that we are adding another element on the structure level and not making a new attribute on it. So for the second student, the name was now Tony Miller. He had 91 points, and the grade was A minus. Okay, but one more possibility is that you can put them all at once. And now if you have a structure which already exists, and like in this case we want to just make another element, then you point it here, that S, third one, is, and then we use the command struct for structure, and here we put in the inputs. So we have to point which attribute we are inserting and then the value for that attribute. So we have, for the attribute name, I'll have here Garcia. Then I want to give his score, and that was 70. And finally the grade, and it's C. And you can see, since we are actually pointing which attributes we put, then this order doesn't have to be the same as they are organized in the structure. You can think that it is in any order. It's not like it's written in stone that name has to be first, score second. That's why they have names, and they are not referred to by number. Okay, so now when I run this whole piece, then my structure will be presented by Matlab a bit differently. Oh yeah, I forgot this one quote here on C, so I got an error saying undefined function or variable C, because in this way Matlab thought that I'm actually referring to some numeric matrix called C and trying to transpose it. So I'm adding the quote here, and now it becomes text as it should. So now you see we have structure with 3, which is 1 by 3, so with 3 items inside. And now when you ask for the contents of the structure, Matlab will just tell you how many items there are and what are the attributes. But when you want to see the individual values, you may need to ask for them one by one. So if I want to see the second student, then I have to ask for S with index 2. And then picking items from structure can be done also in a couple different ways. So for instance, if I want to see, I'm not interested in the names of the students, but I would like to see what kind of scores have been achieved. So if I just type s.score, so I'm asking for content for the attribute, it is showing them one by one. So you see every time it actually got pulled out and assigned to variable ans. However, I would rather see them as a vector, so that maybe then I would like to calculate average value of the scores, or maybe sum them up or something like that. So if you want to do that, you have to tell Matlab to put your individual outcomes in an array, and luckily it is as simple as that. So here, instead of typing just s.score, I put square brackets around it, and I would like to actually assign it into some variable so that I can work with it. So now scores is actually a vector of 3 items, because I had 3 students, so 3 items in my structure, and now I could, for instance, take mean value of those, so that I can know what is the average performance of my students. And then if you would like to do a similar thing, but with the textual variables that you have in here, so in our case name and grade, then you have to combine them using either of the methods we looked at when working with cell arrays. So you either combine the text using this char command, so that's the one which fills in the space, fills in each of the rows with spaces to meet the length of the longest string, or we just use cell array. So again, you just put brackets around the curly braces around your s.name. So s.name, and then to point that we are working with a cell array, or we want it to be arranged as a cell array, we do like this. I will call it names, and if I would like to see it arranged in a column, so one name under another, it's as simple as that. You just put transpose on your cell array, because transpose in this case works the same way as it does on matrices. And one more thing, which refers also not only to structures and not only to cell arrays, but also to normal arrays, is that, for instance, you might be having a structure which has many more students, and you'd like to add one more to it. So how you would have to do it is that you either check from here how many you have. So now it's 3, we have done only 3. But if you don't want to do that check, you can still create yet one more. And I'll use this way to do it. But here, instead of pointing an explicit index, which I would know is the last one, I will rather tell Matlab to create last plus 1 element. So now it means that Matlab will check how many there are, then n will become that number, which in this case is 3, and then we'll add 1, so it now understands that it should actually create a 4th item in our cell array. So when I run this one, you see our structure becomes 1 by 4, because then the last 2 guys are the same. If we list their names, You see now the last one is repeated just because I use the same input. But that's also the way you could use the same trick, for instance, in normal vectors. If you have a vector having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you want to create yet another element. So you can either say that your vector becomes what it used to be and that new element, or equivalent would be that you tell Matlab to make last plus 1 element and then give it a value.